He gave the world his rhythm, his voice, his sweat. He danced where he wasn't welcome, sang where no one like him had ever stood, and forced America to look at itself while he smiled through it. Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't just a performer, he was a contradiction wrapped in silk, black, Jewish, famous, fragile, unstoppable, the man who broke barriers with tap shoes and tuxedos, and paid the price behind closed doors. But this isn't about the man on stage, this is about the man at home, the one they called Dad, or didn't, the one who missed birthdays, whispered secrets from his deathbed, and left 4 children behind with questions no spotlight could answer. One searched for the truth, one wrote through her pain, one stayed silent, and one now carries everything. They were his legacy, not the crowd, not the curtain call. And when the music stopped, they were left alone with the silence. This isn't gossip, it's what fame forgets and what family remembers, and if you believe legacies are built not on applause, but on the ache of those left behind, then subscribe. Because some names don't need to be rediscovered, they need to be remembered properly. 4. Mark Davis. He was listed as adopted, raised by a Rat Pack king and a Swedish starlet. In the photos, he smiled beside Sinatra and Dean. In the papers, he was just the eldest. But in his own mind, he was a question no one answered. Mark Davis grew up in the glow of his father's fame, but the spotlight never landed on him. He didn't dance, he didn't sing. He developed photos at Costco. While strangers brought in their memories, he quietly questioned his own. Why was he adopted a year before his sister was born? Why did the documents list Sammy and May as his birth parents? And yet the world called him adopted. And why? Did his father wait until his final breath to say it? "You are my son." 4 words, no explanation, no follow-up. Was it truth or comfort? Was it confession or metaphor? Mark held those words like a compass, but never found north. And when DNA finally stripped away the hope, the silence was louder than any answer. Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't his biological father. Not by blood, not by science, but the man still whispered it at the end. Maybe that meant more. Because some sons are born, others are claimed. And Mark? He lives far from the cameras. Still quiet, still steady, still holding a name that never quite belonged to him, but somehow still does. 3. Tracy Davis. She was his only child by blood, and yet she felt the furthest from him. Tracy Davis was born in 1961 to a black Jewish icon and a white Swedish actress. Their love made headlines, her birth made them a family. But no camera ever captured what she wanted most, her father home. He was always somewhere else, on tour, on stage, on a screen. And she was left behind, with questions, resentment, and birthdays missed. When she was old enough, she told him the truth. "I always loved you, but I didn't like you much." And in the kind of brutal honesty only broken families know, Sammy looked at her and replied, "Well, I didn't like you either." There was no applause, just silence. And somehow, healing began there. They started talking, spending time, unpacking the years between them like unopened letters. He shared his regrets. She tried to understand the weight he carried. By the time cancer took his voice, she was the one holding his hand. The daughter who once couldn't find him, now refusing to leave his side. He promised he'd live long enough to meet her son. He kept that promise. And in his final days, when words failed him, she showed up with a newborn named Sam. He cried, held the baby, and left this world knowing he'd finally done something right. Years later, Tracy wrote the story they couldn't say out loud. 2 books, one for pain, one for legacy. She became the voice her father didn't always have. Then, in 2020, she was gone too. But before she left, she reminded the world that even legends get it wrong, and even daughters who are forgotten can still forgive. 2. Jeff Davis. There's always one in every family. The one who disappears, not from life, but from the stories. Jeff Davis was adopted not long after Mark, a baby in Sammy's arms, the quiet one in the family photos. No headlines, no scandal, no legacy to fight over, just a name. And then, not even that. As the years passed, Tracy wrote, Mark questioned, Manny inherited, and Jeff, he vanished. No memoir, no interview, no court battle, no statement. Maybe that was the point. While the others wrestled with Sammy's shadow, Jeff stepped out from under it. Or maybe he never stepped into it at all. He was 5 when the marriage ended, too young to remember the spotlight, old enough to feel its absence. He grew up in silence and chose to stay there. And while the world tried to trace bloodlines, Jeff left no footprints, no public life, no headlines to correct. Just the echo of a childhood name, spoken only by siblings who still say it softly when asked. We don't know where he is. We don't know what he remembers. We only know this: he didn't ask for the name Davis. He didn't seek the weight that came with it. And in a world obsessed with legacy, he chose peace over proof. Some inherit the spotlight, some reject it, and some disappear so fully their silence becomes the most honest part of the story. One, Manny Davis. He came last, adopted in 1989, when the crowds were smaller, the tuxedos a little looser, and Sammy Davis Jr. was no longer chasing fame, but time. Manny Davis was 11 when he walked into the home of a legend. But to him, Sammy wasn't a celebrity. He was just Dad. No tour buses, no bodyguards, just a man teaching him how to tie shoes and how to hold his worth. For one brief year, Manny got what the others never had, a father in the room. They went to rehearsals together, dinners, errands, laughs. He saw Sammy the man, not the myth. And then it ended. In May 1990, Sammy was gone. And with him, the money, the stage, the cushion. The mansion was sold. The debts arrived like vultures. The estate nearly bankrupt. Manny was just a boy again. This time without a stage, without a father, and with a famous last name that now came with nothing but burden. But he didn't vanish. He grew up, joined the army, built a quiet life. And when the world came for what little was left of Sammy's legacy, Manny stood in the way. There were lawsuits, challenges to the will, outsiders trying to claim the rights to his father's face, voice, soul. But Manny won. And with that victory, he inherited more than property. He inherited duty. Today, he runs the estate, protects the name, keeps the music alive. Not by performing, but by preserving. He never asked for the spotlight. He just refused to let it go dark. Some children search for their father's face. Some write him into memory. But Manny? He kept the flame lit, not with applause, but with loyalty. There's a photo, somewhere in the dust of time, where all 4 children stand together. Smiles wide, famous father centered. The world looking in from the outside thinking, this is what legacy looks like. But the picture lied. Or maybe it just didn't tell the whole story. Mark was holding a question. Tracy was holding anger. Jeff was already pulling away, and Manny wasn't even born yet. 4 children, 1 name. 4 stories no camera could ever capture in one frame. Because behind every family photo is the moment after it's taken. The silence, the distance, the years. They didn't grow up together in the same room. They didn't grow up with the same father, even though they all called him that. Some heard his voice. Some heard only stories. Some held his hand. Some never asked to. But all of them, in their own way, carried a piece of the man who danced through pain and left behind more than applause. Not a perfect picture, but still a family. Still a truth. Broken frames, still hanging. The world remembers the suits, the smile, the one-eyed charm, the tap shoes beating out rebellion on polished floors. They remember the jokes with Sinatra, the Vegas lights, the moments when Sammy Davis Jr. made history look easy. But children remember something else. They remember the dinners missed, the shows that mattered more than birthdays, the way applause could drown out a lullaby. Mark remembers confusion. Tracy remembers distance. Jeff remembers silence. Manny remembers losing everything and still staying. The public sees a legend. They saw a man, flawed, absent, trying, failing, loving, too late. Because fame forgets what children never can. It forgets the promises made and broken. The phone calls never returned. The ache of watching your father become everyone else's hero while forgetting to be yours. But children, they don't forget. They carry it. Not in headlines, in the soft places, in the quiet rooms where no music played. They don't write memoirs for applause. They remember because it hurt and because they loved him anyway. When the music stopped, there was no standing ovation, just silence and paperwork. Sammy Davis Jr. died on May 16, 1990, 64 years old, world famous and almost broke. Behind the glitz, debts, lawsuits, confused ownership of his name, his music, his memory. And 4 children left behind. No map, no plan, no inheritance, but the name itself. Mark still carried a whispered sentence, "You are my son." Tracy was a mother now, trying to turn pain into pages. Jeff didn't speak. Manny watched everything fall, the house, the comfort, the image, and stayed to pick up what fame had dropped. There were courtrooms, disputes, outsiders trying to profit off a legacy they never lived. Old contracts, forgotten taxes. A man who had once filled stadiums, now reduced to signatures and speculation. And through it all, the children weren't fighting for riches. They were fighting for clarity, for control, for some kind of peace that never arrived on time. Because the final curtain came down, but left the stage in ruins. People chase bloodlines. They draw trees, take tests, search for a name in their cells. But legacy isn't in your veins. It's in your spine. It's what you carry when the spotlight's gone, when there's no money left, when the applause has faded, and all you have is a name that once meant something. Mark never found the truth he was looking for, but he never stopped calling Sammy Dad. Tracy lived through absence and still honored him in ink and memory. Jeff walked away, but never tried to erase it. And Manny? He didn't just carry the name, he protected it. They each carried something different. Pain, silence, duty, questions, but they all carried it, because no one else could. Sammy Davis Jr. was a man of contradictions, and so was the legacy he left. Broken, beautiful, unresolved. And maybe that's what makes it real. Because legacy isn't about perfection, it's about presence, and the choice to keep showing up even when the curtain's already down. They weren't all born from him, but they all lived under his shadow. And when the world forgot, they were the ones still holding the pieces. No statue, no grand farewell. Just 4 names, scattered, quiet, enduring. This isn't a story about fame. It's about what fame leaves behind, not the records, the people. And if you know what it's like to be part of someone's legacy without their name in your DNA, if you've ever loved someone who forgot how to be there, if you've ever protected a memory the world tried to sell, then this isn't just a documentary, it's yours too. Subscribe if you believe a family isn't measured in blood, but in what's carried when no one else is watching. Because some names aren't forgotten. They're waiting to be remembered properly.